On this episode of ResiWeek, ADI unifies Pro AV, Tracknicity for D-Tools, and Flex workspaces are here. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 324, The Tweeners.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by FSR.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories from the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matty Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Amanda Wildman. She is an owner of True Media Home. How you doing, Amanda?
I am doing great. So good to see you, Matt.
And maybe Ponch will chime in once or twice because she's on the road. There he is. But the person who was actually invited to this show, other than Ponch, is Mr. Jason Knott. He is a Chief Content Officer at CE Pro. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Thank you both for joining us. Let's kick this right off with a story that comes to us from Residential Systems. ADI is unifying their AV product distribution offerings. They've integrated, or they will be integrating, Herman Pro AV and ShoreView distribution under the ADI Global Distribution brand. Herman Integration Services will remain a value-added service. They acquired both of these companies over the last little bit, but they're being rolled in under the brand, under the heading, all available under the ADI Global website, etc. Which I'm just gonna say it. This is I think this is a bigger deal than most will believe, because when you look at the makeup of customers from ADI, it is not the ones that you typically would think of when you think Pro AV, although a lot of them moonlight in the Pro AV category. Amanda, with Pro AV being now, truly under the ADI brand, this is not to say that they didn't have some Pro AV to begin with, but it was limited. It was, it's your place to find, Bose Freestyle, for example. That type of product was easily found there, but not planar video walls, etc. Some of the other really cool things that are coming in from Herman and Shorevine. Is this going to make it easier for specifically residential integrators and those security and access integrators who are playing in the light commercial or true commercial space to have access to proper Pro AV solutions and hopefully utilize those solutions so people like me stop pulling my hair out every time I see a really shoddy commercial job filled with residential projects?
Well, I think that shows where the landscape is going. I mean, we've all had conversations about this during the lockdowns and during the shutdowns. There's been such a cross between residential and then the light commercial. And I know for us during part of our shutdown, we do have some commercial projects like restaurants or things like that. The restaurants were shut down, so we were able to go in and we were able to do, some projects and do some updated stuff. So just going to make residential people, I think, have better access to better equipment. Hopefully some training is going to come along with that, because I know they've got great training days and great product days at ADI. We utilize our local ADI office a lot for that. So I think it's just really showing where the landscape is going, where these are definitely just crossing over more.
I like it. Jason, when you see this, and I know you know a lot about ADI and the inner workings and the traditional customer base of ADI, is this more than just a simplification of that consolidation of their business markets now? With that acquisition, is it just simplifying their business to bring it under the brand, or is there an active push to consolidate, but also open up this vast market to their current base?
So one thing I know that for years a lot of custom integrators didn't really gravitate to ADI because I heard so many times from them saying, well, they think security first. Mm-hmm. They're not truly a custom distributor. They think about security first. And remember, they weren't just consolidating the Herman Pro brand, but also Shoreview Distribution on the security side. They also, which was another strong regional security distributor. And then think about the size of the security market. I just saw the recent numbers from Barnes Associates. The professional security space last 2021 was a $66 billion industry. Huge. So it's 33, which is interesting. 33 billion equipment and labor, 33 billion monitoring.
Yeah.
So right down the middle, split. So the thing that I enjoy, I say enjoy, but I'm encouraged by this, and everybody kind of knows that I preach this until I'm blue in the face, is this migration towards services that I think custom integrators are recognizing as they see the value of their labor is so much more important. The security guys have figured it out for a long time with recognizing that their value isn't necessarily on the equipment side as much as it's going to be on the services side. So I am encouraged, not necessarily from your direction, Matt, but maybe the flip side, that some of these pro AV guys are going to recognize and learn some lessons from the ADI group on how they can help, and they've helped the security industry migrate to getting that recurring revenue base or that services based element to their businesses.
Do you think that there's a big enough, I don't want to say market, but market segment? Do you think the market segment that is going to be tailored to Pro AV from the ADI customer base has an opportunity to find an RMR option?
There already is happening in the commercial office space. As you know, you can do remote conference scheduling for individual boardrooms and get a recurring revenue base from that standpoint. So there's already some happening in the commercial space. Digital signage has a recurring revenue element to it from a content standpoint. So there's ways to make money in the commercial Pro AV space. Now, whether that expands to now, okay, I'm doing this corporate boardroom facility. I'm going to do the scheduling system for the conference room. Hey, why can't I get that alarm license and do the alarm monitoring also? Yeah. I'm going to do the smoke detectors. I'm going to do, then it gravitates into things like sound masking and all those sorts of things that you can bring to bear and really be that one-stop solution.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's change topics for a moment. This comes to us from CE Pro. D-Tools unveils their direct integration with Tracknicity. It is a kind of a streamlined inventory management system. Now, it's been available sort of to D-Tools if you were subscribed to their QuickBooks integration. That worked, but you had to have QuickBooks integrated properly, yada, yada, yada. And we're well aware that most integrators aren't necessarily super up to snuff in their accounting and business processes systems. Not to flog a horse there, but it's really cool because now you can access all of that information directly through the app, through SI, and again see essentially all of your inventory, whether it's been picked, whether it's been staged, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which I think is becoming a bigger thing. I hope people are paying attention to it. Jason, when you see this, when you follow this, is this showing that more integrators are really taking an active approach into how they are managing not only their inventory, but their business processes? We've obviously had a massive upheaval in inventory and the way we go to business from an inventory standpoint in the last 2 years. But is this showing that more integrators are actively participating and trying to be proactive in this? Or is this just an evolutionary step that this was going to get better?
Well, to answer your question, I'm sure it was more active integrators because D-Tools told me directly that there was demand for this. They were getting requests for this over and over. When are you going to have direct integration between Tracknicity and D-Tools? So there wouldn't have been the demand if it wasn't the case. But we could do this. We could do a 2-hour show here talking about inventory management situation, and I not to overstate or even understate it, but I think the industry is in a real crisis situation right now in terms of the supply chain and the inventory. I'm getting calls every single day, emails every single day from integrators who are just completely flummoxed as to what to do to solve their cash flow issues, when they should be ordering, how much they should be ordering, stockpile, what should they be stockpiling, what shouldn't they be stockpiling. Integrators who are telling me that they're losing millions of dollars in revenue because customers just don't understand the situation. And I really would love to pick Amanda's brain as to, what is the best way to communicate this situation to the customer base, because the inventory situation and the supply chain situation, we all get it. The integrators all get it. The manufacturers understand, but some of the customers just don't.
Amanda, first of all, answer that question. I do have a follow-up, but I am amazed at how often our customers, because I'm in the same boat you are, you explain it to them one day, and you come back the next day and explain it to them again, and they can't seem to correlate, an empty shelf at the grocery store is the same thing as, an empty shelf at your local integrator. How do you go about explaining again and again and again to a customer who just doesn't seem to want to get it?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing. And none of us got into this business because we wanted to disappoint people, right? We got into this business because we wanted to make magic. We wanted to, make cool things happen in people's homes. And so I think the hardest thing at first is potentially having that disappointment, or like when you have to have that conversation with somebody. So a couple of years ago, I read this book. I don't even remember who wrote it, but Eat That Frog, right? Where it talks about going and having that conversation, that hard conversation first. And I think as integrators, we need to do that, have those hard conversations first, but also make sure that we're having those conversations not only with our clients, but making sure we're expressing that to our other partners in the field too, so that the builder knows that, yes, we're telling the builder, so that they hear it from the builder, so that they hear it from the designer, so that they hear it, so that they are all abreast of what is exactly going on. And just being honest. It's hard and it sucks, but you've got to be honest about it and let them know, look, this is the reality. If you for sure want this, I also can't be, like we were talking about earlier, I can't be your inventory management. It can't be at like my cost where I'm just stocking it and storing it. If you want this guaranteed at this time, we might have to order it early. And that means you're going to have to pay for it earlier in the process than what you normally would have to. But that's going to have to be a conversation that you're going to have. And it's not fun conversation. I mean, nobody wants to buy something 6 months before it gets installed, especially because they're all freaked out too that the technology is all going to change. And I'm like, it's going to change in the fact that it's no longer here. But in the next 6 months, it's not necessarily going to be, like life-changing, change, for the most part. So we can order early, but they're going to have some skin in the game too. They're going to have to pay for that cost up front. I mean, I can't float that when you talk about cash flow. And, I think that it's great what D-Tools is doing with this, bringing in this process for inventory, because you can't hardly go on an AV chat room or an AV group and people aren't out there asking and just saying, what software is out there to help me? How can I run my business better? How can I, we've gone from kind of being the, out of your own home. I mean, some of us are still out of our own home business or whatever, to being more like grown up, legitimate businesses and inventory and warehouses and cash flow and things like that. So I think every integrator is looking at, how can I get these processes easier? How can I get them nailed down? How can I have it where I can see it at the touch of a finger? Things like that. So I think it's great that D-Tools is doing that.
Let me ask you this, and I'm glad you brought up the professional aspect of this. Do you think that this is going to be the watershed moment that separates the actual business people that work in AV from the people that love doing AV so they can, buy a boat or whatever? Last week, our friend of the show, Steven, made a real hot take that a large percentage of integrators will no longer be in business when we get back to, next day delivery for every product under the sun. I don't disagree with him, not necessarily due to just, stock issues, but from the fact that a large number of integrators are not necessarily good business people. Is this going to be that moment?
It's hard. You have to take the classes. You have to do the things, that it requires to own a business. You can't just, hey, this is a fun hobby or whatever. Like, you have to know how to work on your business. I mean, Ponch and I are even, growing up, and we're, meeting with different people and developing different things for our employees and developing different processes and constantly learning that, because we have a vision of where it is that we want to go. And it's no longer just, quick installing. The biggest thing for us has been trying as often as we can to get both of us out of the field, and then put the trust, in somebody else. Because when you make that leap from, just being a husband-wife team where you go out and you do all your own installs and everything like that, now you're growing up and you're adding employees. So what does that mean to add employees? What extra paperwork is that? And what roles are you going to fulfill? And now we're in a big thing with, like you said, cash flow. I mean, that's a new concept to a lot of us, right? Is how do I cash flow that? How do I bring in that inventory? How do I manage that inventory? Used to be really easy because you knew you could just pop in at, your local distribution like an ADI if you needed something last minute, or, things could ship out right away. You could just walk in and get it. Well, that's not the case anymore. So it takes much more planning, and then project planning, and the bigger the project, the longer the process. So you're not doing, a small, maybe, 6 months, maybe it's spanning out to 8 months to a year. So you have to learn how to manage that and how to have those right steps in place and those right processes in place so you don't miss a step.
So the interesting thing, Matt, about your question about the shakeout is, let's just kind of assume that the economy does slow, and that we're going to see, companies, the market slow, the general economy slow down, and demand slow.
A touch of inflation.
Just a touch, as we all experience. Yeah. So the couple of things I've heard is, one is, somebody said, well, the interesting part of that is that might actually help ease the labor problem a bit, because if there is a shakeout and some of the companies go out of business. The other part of it that's interesting, though, is we saw this back in, the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, is, remember, a third of the companies in this industry are sole entrepreneurs, or they have one employee.
Yep.
That's a third of CE Pro's readership. And those companies don't have a lot of overhead. As Amanda said, they're working out of their homes. Those companies, it doesn't take a lot for them to stay in business as a one-man shop. Then you have the companies that run efficiently. You're going to have these companies that have, built a company culture. They've trained their people. They're efficient. It's all the tweeners, the in-betweeners, of the companies who are trying to grow. They're maybe not so efficient. They've got a certain number of employees that they kind of manage. That's where the shakeout's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because you're always going to have, it's just a point to remember. There's always going to be those sole entrepreneurs and one employee companies in the space, no matter what happens.
There's a huge volume of, a guy and a helper. That being said, that guy and a helper is one bad decision away from going out of business too. Whereas the in-betweeners, our friend Brock McGinnis said this the other day, that, to your point, the large companies usually can shoulder this. They have the expertise and the business acumen to navigate it. It is those tweeners that, and I love that term, so I'm going to steal it. It is those tweeners who a couple of projectors sit on the shelf for too long, and all of a sudden they got, $30,000 that they could have used to pay some people that's sitting on a shelf because they over ordered and they didn't realize it. Those are the companies that are going to have a hard time.
Well, and those are the guys that are going to migrate to the installer net service and those sorts of services where they're just going to be responding to, quote unquote, our online RFP requests for do it for me Nest thermostat installations and things like that. So I agree, that they are one large project away, and some of those small guys, those one-man shops, will take on large projects, but I think you'll see them consolidate back to being service-oriented, do-it-for-me guys.
Yep, very much so. All right, let's hit our last topic of the day quickly because I like it. Excuse me. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today. Hybrid work is here to stay, and so are hybrid flex workspaces. Read through the article. It makes a lot of assumptions that I'm not sure I agree with. Specifically that hybrid space is going to maintain and continue, and employers are going to be very happy to allow a variety of hybrid work environments to happen. And I also specifically will call out the statement that people have highly professional, they have top quality, technologically advanced home offices. I'm flagging that one. And if our editor friend over there at ResiTech listens to this, I'm calling bull on that one. Not saying it doesn't happen, but good Lord, there's a lot of people who have a laptop sitting on a bunch of books, and that is highly advanced.
What I've heard from integrators is the C-suite guys, they were getting calls from the C-suite guys for the nice offices. They go, beyond that, there's a company that's just told their employees, fend for yourself.
Very much so. Hence why I call bull. Amanda, I want to start with you on this one. I don't doubt that hybrid is to a degree is here to stay. But I feel like this is one of those things where this is what we want to see, because hybrid workspaces has become like the buzzword, just like huddle rooms were super popular, the last 5 years pre-pandemic. Everybody wanted a huddle room. Now everybody wants a hybrid workspace. I just don't buy it. I think we want this to happen. I don't think this is actually what's going to happen. Am I wrong on that?
I think all the moms that are work from home moms are now saying, please get me back to the office a little bit. I think going forward, there's always going to be this, kind of like little mix where it's going to be less reliant on you being there like every single day from 8 until 5 and like punch in, punch out kind of thing. I think hopefully bosses are getting smarter in the fact that they realize like you've got to work. Sometimes you have to work longer. Sometimes you're working shorter, but you're getting the work done. But I do think that there are going to be people that like working from home, but then also having the shake up and the change up. And I worry about like this next generation with like relationships. Like I remember like when I first started off in these jobs, if I would have been, complete work from home, like how did you meet people or how did you go out? Like everybody would like, okay, we leave the office and we're going to go out for drinks, and then you'd meet other people's friends and stuff like that. So I think people are definitely going to step it up at home because they're going to want to have a space where like the kids can do homework should things get shut down again. They're going to want a space to be able to work from home and be prepared for it. But I don't know necessarily that we're going to see a ton of people have complete dedicated spaces. I think it's going to be more of like a flex space of like, how can I take that mudroom area and maybe make an area where we could do work from home, school from home. So you might see, some more internet connections and potentially some better lighting because that area might be used for that in the future. But I don't think like for a while everybody thought, oh my gosh, we're going to go back to like 2 independent dedicated home offices, one for mom, one for dad, plus a workspace. I mean, we're not going to see that, but I think we're going to see people get more creative about, okay, if I need to carve out a workspace in this home, where could that area potentially be should the event come up again where we have this type of situation. So like I'm more cognizant of like mudroom areas, locker room areas. Do I have charging stations? Do I have places to put a laptop? Do I maybe put a little bit better lighting in there than what I did in the past in the event that I have to use that for a hybrid working space? And having more of those conversations with homeowners and with the architects and designers.
Yeah, I love it. Jason, is this flexibility that has been so touted the last 6 months, really, was this an inevitable response, or was this just an evolution of what we're what was going to happen in the work site. And I continually preface, I've got a client who's a senior VP at a fairly large tech firm here in my local area. And they went to hot desking kind of mid-pandemic when they were starting to get people back in the office. And their employees absolutely hated it. And they hated it because previously they all had their own little space. And like, I'm not talking about hot desking in a, corporate office environment where everyone had a dedicated office with a door and lights and plants and the whole kick. I'm talking like cubicle hot desking. But everybody had their own cubicle. They had their own little space. And when it came back, they had taken like 60% of their cubicles out, and they were hot desking in it. And it was like, show up with your little banker's box for the day, put it down, and desk. And that's the flexibility side that I don't understand. Was this inevitable, or is this just an evolution?
Well, to pick up on Amanda's point, it's interesting because I think companies are publicly announcing we're going to virtual or hybrid workplaces, because if you don't say that, you're not going to get candidates.
Yeah.
People want to have that flexibility. I also can tell you, I come from the era where I had to wear a tie every day to the office for the first 5 or 7 years. Then it was a big deal that we didn't have to wear a tie on Fridays. Wow. Yeah. Wow. We could go with that, just a button down shirt on Fridays.
Oh, snap.
And I come into the office every single day. I've got a 37-mile commute. But out of this, I will say that if I can use a personal lesson, I realize I don't need to come in every day. I can do a lot of the same things that I do at home. Now, I have a puppy that is driving me crazy at home. And also the other thing is my waistline doesn't like the fact that I have access to a pantry 20 all the time, which I'm snacking all the time. So when you say inevitable, I think it's been enlightening for people like me, old school people like me, to realize that I can have that hybrid workforce. And at the same time, I think you have to have that hybrid workforce in order to attract new employees. Now, also, we're talking about, inflation and gas prices and those sorts of things. People, it's a bite out of people's pockets to commute, tolls, etc. So that's also, I think, a benefit to be able to offer employees the ability to not have to drive in every day. So yeah. I do think it's here to stay. Whether it's inevitable or not, I think I love Amanda's point about the socialization element of it. I know I can tell you with my youngest daughter, she struggled. The homeschooling thing was really tough from a socialization standpoint. So if she was of working age, she probably would have had the same level of types of struggles.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's leave it there. Thank you both for joining us. Amanda, if people want to connect with you, learn more about True Media Home, where can they do that?
Anywhere on the social interwebs, Matt. It's just True Media Home on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the above.
I was going to say, are you on TikTok?
I am. It's
Look
so
at that.
Scary. It is. My kids cringe, though. My kids literally cringe.
I understand. Jason, thank you for joining us. If people want to connect with you, learn more about CE Pro or Emerald, where can they do that?
You go to cepro.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Jason W. Knott.
Excellent. Thank you both again for joining me. Thank you for listening and joining as well. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and most other social platforms, with the exception of TikTok. We don't do that here. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you support them as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all we have for this episode of ResiWeek.